Barb, serious question here. Who's in more legal jeopardy as far as you can tell, Trump or the lawyers who lied to the DOJ on his behalf?
Yeah, that's a really great question. And I think we're going to need to know a little more about the investigation before we can know that. It may be that the government already knows the answer to that question based on those redaction bars. You know, about 3/4 of that affidavit was redacted. But we do know that they got a subpoena for video surveillance evidence that could show who was going in and out of that room, that could really tell us who might know that those statements were false. But Christina Bobb, at the moment, seems to be the one in the most jeopardy because she's the one who signed that document, who attested that she had made a diligent search around Mar-a-Lago and that she believed in good faith that all the documents had been returned. And one really telling statement in that affidavit is, after about 2 hours, we found hundreds of documents. It's really hard to imagine that anyone could have done a diligent search and not found a single one of these when we found hundreds in that short period of time. So on its face, it appears to be that she's the one who's in the most trouble. But of course, it really depends on what her source of information was. Is that something she was told by Donald Trump? Did she have access to his office such that she could make that representation? So I think we need to know a little more there. But somebody's in some trouble for making that false attestation.
And Barb, I mean, what kind of timeline can we expect from the Justice Department? Could we see an indictment by year's end, for instance?
I think we might. You know, when you talk about the January 6th investigation, for example, I don't think we'll see an indictment in that, if ever, until well into 2023, because it's such an enormous investigation with so many different tentacles to it. This one's really kind of finite. There is a certain number of documents. There's been this back and forth conversation about getting them back. It's really a small universe of people who've been involved in all of this and a small universe of people who had access to Mar-a-Lago. And so it seems to me that they're going to know the answer to these questions after they've interviewed those people. It sounds like they've already done a good bit of that work. And so, yeah, I think if they're going to indict, it could very well be done by the end of the year.
And Clint, this week the National Archives condemned the politicization of its work, saying it's neither for or against Trump. How do you see the Mar-a-Lago case changing perception of law enforcement?
It's been remarkable that the Conservative Party, which is typically known to be backing law enforcement and to have a lot of members and support from law enforcement, is now under the gun at the federal level. I mean, the FBI is not a liberal organization inside. They wear white and blue shirts, and that's about it. So it's confusing, I think, for them to see this sort of assault on what they were doing. And that spreads far beyond the FBI to really every branch of the executive, which is curious, right? The National Archives, they have a very deliberate and set mission. It is infinitely valuable. That's how we keep our history. We know what the truth is in this country. And those documents, those are the U.S. taxpayers' documents. It's the citizens of the United States. That's what President Trump, former President Trump, just never seemed to understand, is those weren't his documents. He was doing a job on behalf of all Americans. So when you look at the National Archives, there's rarely such a pure set of people who have such a well-defined mission that's so important to the history of our country. Why we would ever want to tarnish them or go after them when they clearly don't have a partisan edge. It is really just about, we want the future of this country to understand what happened in the past to this country.